After selling my grandmother's jewelry to help fund my husband's business dream, I found out he had used it to take his mistress on a cruise. When I confronted him, he said, "It's my reward for putting up with you." I contacted the cruise company, cancelled the tickets with proof of fraud, and showed up at the dock with police in tow. This isn't something I ever thought I'd write. But I need to get it out. I've been sitting on this for a while now, going back and forth on whether to talk about it publicly. But after everything that happened, I think I need to. Not for attention. Not for sympathy. But because maybe someone else out there is about to make the same mistake I did, and maybe this'll help them stop. I'm 38. I live in Iowa, Cedar Rapids. I've lived here my whole life. It's not fancy. It's not exciting. But it's home. I work at a credit union. I've had the same job for 11 years. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. I'm steady. I'm responsible. I don't take big risks. I'm the kind of person who always reads the fine print. That's why it still blows my mind that I let a man like Mark into my life. We met when I was 27. I remember exactly what I was wearing, a dark green sweater and jeans, hair up in a ponytail because I was running late. He came into the branch I worked at, needing help with a loan. His smile was easy, confident. He had this whole, just figuring things out vibe. It made me feel like he had potential, like he was building something. He said all the right things. Made me laugh. Asked me out that same day. For a while, he seemed great. He worked in insurance back then, but he didn't love it. He always said he had bigger plans, he wanted to own a business, be his own boss, never grind for someone else again. He had ideas. A gourmet burger food truck, an app that connected handymen with homeowners, even a mini golf bar at one point. I thought it was kind of charming, how he dreamed out loud like that. But the dreaming never stopped, and the doing never started. After a couple years, I started to see the pattern. He'd get hyped about a new idea, spend weeks obsessing over it, then give up when it got hard or when money ran tight. He'd blame the market, or negative people, or small-minded Midwestern thinking. He never blamed himself. I was the one who kept things running. I paid the rent. I kept the fridge full. I made sure bills didn't go to collections. I thought that was what love was, holding things down while the other person found themselves. Stupid. I know that now. My grandma Della passed away when I was 25. She raised me. My mom was in and out of rehab, and my dad was a no-show. Grandma Della was my constant. When I moved out, she gave me her jewelry. It wasn't flashy. Just a few gold chains, some earrings, and her wedding ring from my grandfather. But it was hers. And she wanted me to have it. I kept it in a small locked box in my closet. I only took it out a few times a year, just to look at it. It reminded me who I came from. 3 years ago, Mark came home one night talking a mile a minute. He had the one, an actual opportunity, not just an idea. His friend Darren, who I'd met once at a backyard barbecue and didn't trust for a second, had started a business making custom outdoor grills. "These aren't cheap metal boxes," he said. "These are luxury pieces, for rich people. We're talking $5,000 a unit." He told me Darren needed a partner. Someone who could buy in with $15,000. And in return, Mark would get equity in the company. "We'll be set," he said. "This is it." I told him we didn't have $15,000. We were already living paycheck to paycheck, and I was paying off a dental bill from a root canal he'd put on my card. That's when he brought up the jewelry. He said it so casually. "You've got that old stuff from your grandma. Just sitting in a box. You're not doing anything with it." I told him no. Hard no. That was not something I was willing to part with. He got mad. Not loud, but cold. Started sleeping on the couch. Didn't talk to me. Made passive-aggressive comments about how I didn't believe in him. After 3 days of silence, he came into the kitchen while I was making coffee and hugged me from behind. Told me he was sorry, that he just got carried away. He kissed my neck and said, "She'd want you to have a good life. Not just be stuck in this rut." I broke. I told him he could borrow it. But he had to sign a note, something saying he'd get it back in 2 months, or replace every item. He laughed and said that was so formal, but he signed it. A month later, I asked to see the pawn receipt. He said he lost it. 2 weeks after that, he said the deal fell through. Darren had some tax issue or something. I asked about the jewelry. He said it was complicated, that the pawn shop already sent it off. I didn't know what that meant, but deep down, I knew. It was gone. I cried in the shower for an hour that night. I wanted to scream at him. But I didn't. I just shut down. Then one day, about 5 weeks later, I walked past his laptop on the kitchen table. The screen was open. Gmail was up. He was in the bathroom. I wasn't looking for anything. I just glanced. I wish I hadn't. There it was, Royal Seas Cruise confirmation. 2 guests. 1 room. Balcony suite. Sailing from Galveston. 10 nights. Upgraded drink package. Champagne on arrival. Couples massage. I opened the email. The guest names were listed right there. Mark Benson. Sierra Whitman. I felt my whole body freeze. I didn't even cry at first. I just stared at the screen. Then I started clicking through. I found more emails. Restaurant reservations. Flight tickets. Even messages from a second Gmail account that must have been hers. I can't wait to fall asleep next to you every night. Finally away from all that stress. And then, she doesn't deserve you. She's not your real partner. I'll show you what it feels like to be seen. I sat there and stared at those words. Then I opened our wedding photo album and threw it in the trash. When he came home that night, I didn't say anything. I just waited. Let him eat. Let him change. Let him talk about nothing. Then I stood in front of him and asked one question. "Who's Sierra?" He looked at me like I asked if he wanted takeout. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He rolled his eyes. "She's someone who actually listens." I asked him about the cruise. He said, "You weren't using the money. I earned that. After everything I've dealt with, I deserve something." I asked him if he even cared about what he took from me. "My grandma. Her memory." "You're so damn dramatic," he said. "It's just jewelry." That's when something broke in me. Not snapped. Broke. Quiet. Cold. Final. I walked away and sat in the bedroom with my planner. I started writing down names, dates, numbers. I took screenshots of everything. His emails. The flight receipts. The messages to her. I made a plan. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up making a list. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew I wasn't going to cry anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. That's what he expected. He wanted a reaction so he could play the victim. So he could tell Sierra how crazy I was, how I was holding him back. I wasn't going to give him that. Instead, I called off work the next day and started digging. I called the pawn shop first. I still had the slip from when I helped him bring the jewelry in. Back then, I'd gone with him just to make sure he didn't do anything shady. I never thought I'd need to follow up. But now, I needed everything. The manager remembered us. He said the jewelry had been sold off within weeks. "Gold goes fast," he said. "Especially sentimental stuff, people pick it up for a deal." My stomach dropped. He confirmed the total amount Mark got for it. It was less than what Mark told me. A lot less. That told me everything I needed to know. He didn't even use all of it for the business lie. He sold it and pocketed the cash to take his little girlfriend on vacation. I asked the guy if I could get any paperwork confirming the sale. He said yes. I drove over, picked it up, and scanned every page into my computer. Next, I called the cruise line. I didn't tell them everything right away. Just that I was calling about a reservation under Mark Benson's name, and that I believed it was made using the proceeds of stolen property. They said they couldn't give me too much over the phone without proof, but if I sent documentation, they'd have their fraud department review it. I sent everything. The police report I filed the day before, I told them the truth. My husband sold jewelry he did not own, with proof that it was gifted to me in a will. I sent the pawn shop paperwork, a copy of my grandma's will, and screenshots of the cruise confirmation showing Mark had booked it just days after selling the jewelry. It took 2 days for the cruise line to respond. But when they did, they were firm. The trip was cancelled. They refunded the booking, to me, the rightful owner. The fraud claim gave them legal grounds to void the trip, and since my name was attached as a party with proof of ownership, they complied. I asked for a confirmation letter and a note that the names had been flagged for check and security. They agreed. Now I needed the final piece, the police. I called the Galveston PD and spoke to a supervisor about the case. I gave them the case number from my local report and explained the situation in detail. I sent over all documentation. They told me they couldn't arrest him just for showing up, but they could be on site in case things escalated. Especially with a flagged reservation. I booked a one-way ticket to Houston and took a Greyhound to Galveston. I got there the night before the cruise was set to leave. I checked into a cheap motel, ate a bag of chips for dinner, and stared at the ceiling for hours. Part of me still didn't believe it was real. That this was my life. That I was here because the man I married was taking another woman on a romantic cruise with my dead grandmother's jewelry money. The morning of the cruise, I dressed like someone invisible. Jeans, plain gray hoodie, hair in a bun, sunglasses. I stood near the port entrance with my phone in hand, watching the crowd. And then I saw them. He was wearing a blue polo shirt, khakis, sunglasses on top of his head like some cheesy vacation dad. She, Sierra, looked exactly like the type of woman who would date someone else's husband and think it made her special. Blonde, tight tank top, flip-flops, giant purse. They were laughing. Laughing. They looked like they didn't have a care in the world. They got in line for check-in. I watched as they reached the counter. The cruise agent scanned their documents, then paused. She frowned. Called over a manager. Mark started to look confused. He leaned in, tried to argue. Sierra stepped back and crossed her arms. That's when the police officers walked up. They weren't in a rush. Just calm, steady. They spoke to the cruise manager, then to Mark. I couldn't hear what was said exactly, but I saw the officer point toward the building and nod. Mark's face turned pale. Sierra looked furious. Then Mark turned around and saw me. He froze. Like he couldn't believe it. I didn't move. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching. He yelled across the pavement. You psycho! What the hell is this? One of the officers stepped between us, but I wasn't going toward him. I didn't need to. Sierra stormed up to me, and I braced myself, but she stopped a few feet away. You lied to me, she hissed. You said you were divorced. I smiled. I'm about to be. She turned and slapped him. Hard. Right across the face. I wish I had it on video. One of the cops had to hold back a laugh. They led him away. Not in cuffs, but clearly not allowed to board. I followed at a distance as they escorted him out of the terminal. He kept shouting over his shoulder at me, calling me names, swearing, telling me I ruined his life. I didn't say a word. I let the sound of the cruise ship horn drown him out. After that, everything moved fast. He was served divorce papers within days. He tried to contest it. Claimed I was mentally unstable, that I made up the whole thing. But I had every document. Every email. Every receipt. Every recording. My lawyer destroyed him. But it wasn't over yet. Because what I didn't expect was that Sierra had her own secret. I didn't expect to ever hear from Sierra again. Honestly, I didn't care what happened to her. As far as I was concerned, she was just a detail in the larger mess. But about 2 weeks after the cruise debacle, I got a message on Facebook from someone named Sierra Whitman. At first, I thought it was a prank. Or maybe her way of trying to gloat or throw shade. But when I opened it, I was surprised. I didn't know he was married. He told me you two were separated and just working out the legal stuff. I found out the truth the day of the cruise. I should have known. I feel like an idiot. If you want the whole story, I'm willing to talk. I waited a day before replying. Then I said yes. We met at a diner halfway between where we both lived. I didn't dress up. I didn't want to pretend this was something more than it was. She showed up in a plain black tee, no makeup, and sunglasses on her head. She looked tired. Like someone who hadn't been sleeping well. She brought a folder. That folder had printed screenshots of text messages, emails, and a timeline. She was organized. She told me she was an administrative assistant for a construction firm, and being detail-oriented was just how she was wired. I listened. She said she met Mark at a gas station. No joke. He came in to get a drink, she was at the next pump. He struck up a conversation about the weather, complimented her car, then asked her out to lunch. She was flattered. She was going through a rough patch after a breakup. She said Mark seemed grown, like someone who had his life together. He told her from the start that he had been married, but was separated. Said they'd been living apart and just hadn't finalized the paperwork. He made me sound like I was the one who refused to let go. Sierra said she never went to his place, he always came to hers. And he told her he was between homes, staying with a cousin while he waited for a business deal to clear. He even sent her fake paperwork, divorce drafts, receipts for a moving truck, even a fake lease agreement. The man faked a lease to keep the lie going. But the worst part? He told her he was paying alimony. He framed me as a greedy ex-wife who took everything from him. Said I forced him to sell his grandmother's jewelry to pay legal fees and child support. We don't even have kids. She showed me messages where he complained about how hard I made his life, how he was suffocating, and how I used emotional blackmail to keep him trapped. He spun it like I was a manipulative villain. Told her he needed a vacation to breathe for the first time in years. And then, according to her, he asked her to help pay for the cruise. She sent him $600 toward the flights and drink packages. He told me it was just a little help, she said. That I was investing in our future. God, I was so stupid. She looked like she wanted to cry. I didn't pity her. But I didn't hate her, either. She got conned, just like I did. In a different way. Then she said something that knocked the wind out of me. Has he ever mentioned a woman named Stephanie? I said no. Never heard the name. Sierra nodded slowly. Pulled out one last printed page. It was a picture of Mark at a wedding. His arm around another woman. Different from me. Different from Sierra. Short dark hair. Older than both of us. That's his ex-fiancé, she said. She found me after the cruise story went around on Facebook. Apparently, he stole from her, too. Left her with credit card debt and disappeared in the middle of the night. So he'd done this before. This wasn't just a one-time betrayal. This was a pattern. A full-blown con. We stayed another hour going through everything. By the end, we agreed on one thing: if this man was willing to fake documents, lie to multiple women, and steal from people he supposedly loved, he didn't just deserve a divorce. He deserved to be exposed. After that meeting with Sierra, I went home and just sat on the floor in my living room. The house was too quiet. Every corner felt like a reminder of how much time I'd wasted trying to build something with a man who never saw me as a partner, only a tool. But I wasn't sad anymore. I was focused. If Mark had done this before, to me, Sierra, and Stephanie, he'd probably do it again. Maybe he already had. And as much as I wanted to just move on and forget him, I couldn't stop thinking about how easy it had been for him to manipulate 3 different women, steal money, fake documents, and walk away. What if the next person he targeted didn't catch on? What if it was someone more vulnerable? I called Sierra again the next day and asked her if she'd be willing to help me do a little digging. She didn't hesitate. She said yes. We started by putting together a timeline. I had his email access for a while, before he figured out I changed the password. Sierra still had text threads saved. We compared dates. From what we could tell, Mark had started seeing Sierra while we were still together, about 8 months before the cruise. But when I looked back at my calendar, I realized something else. That was the same month he told me he needed time to clear his head and started sleeping at his friend Darren's place a few nights a week. It hit me like a punch to the chest. He wasn't working late. He wasn't staying with Darren. He was with her. He'd been playing us both from the beginning. A few days later, Sierra texted me again. One line, I found another woman. She sent me a screenshot of a public Facebook post. A woman named Candace Mitchell posted a photo of Mark at a party, arm around her waist, with the caption, 1 year since we met, my rock, my best friend. I love you more every day. The post was a year old. I clicked through Candace's profile. They'd taken weekend trips together, had dinner with her parents, even went to some kind of couples retreat in Kansas City. The pictures were spaced out, but consistent. They were still seeing each other, during the time he was living with me and dating Sierra. That made 4 of us. I didn't know how much more of this I could stomach, but at that point, I wasn't turning back. We reached out to Candace. At first, she ignored us. Then Sierra sent her the screenshots of everything, cruise confirmation, messages between Mark and both of us, photos, and a copy of the report I filed with the police. She went quiet for 2 days. Then we got a group message. I had no idea. I feel sick. He told me you were a bitter ex-wife who stalked him. He said you made up lies to ruin his life. I can't believe I bought it. She agreed to meet. So now it wasn't just me and Sierra. It was all 3 of us. We met at a Chili's in Des Moines. It felt surreal. We were strangers who had nothing in common, except for one man. One lying, selfish, manipulative man. Candace told us more. Apparently, Mark told her he was an entrepreneur recovering from financial abuse. That's what he called me. He claimed I maxed out credit cards in his name and faked a medical emergency to take his savings. Said I threatened suicide if he left me. He told her that Sierra was a fling who turned stalker. That she had been sending him threats. He'd created a full fantasy world, where he was the victim of every woman in his life. That's when Sierra said something that changed everything. She looked at both of us and said, I think we should warn other people. I said, you mean tell his future girlfriends? No, she said. I mean everyone. We started a private Facebook group. Just the 3 of us at first. We named it Women Burned by Mark Benson. We used fake names and blocked his profile. We posted the timeline, the receipts, the screenshots, and told our stories. Within a week, 2 more women joined. One was from Oklahoma. She said she met Mark at a conference, dated him for 3 months, and he disappeared after borrowing $800 for a license fee for a catering business. The other woman said he'd used a different last name. Now we had 5. It was clear, Mark was a full-on serial manipulator. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a con artist. A predator. I contacted my lawyer and showed him everything. He told me it was possible we could build a civil case against Mark, not just for the jewelry, but for fraud, emotional damages, and defamation. Sierra and Candace said they'd testify. We filed a joint civil suit. At first, Mark didn't respond. He ignored the court summons and acted like nothing was happening. Then one night, Sierra got a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. It was him. "You don't know what you're doing," he said. "You think you're smart? You're gonna regret this. I know things too. You wanna play games? Let's play." We turned that voicemail over to the court. It was intimidation. And it backfired. Now the judge ordered a hearing with all parties present. Mark was being dragged into court whether he liked it or not. He thought we were done. He didn't realize this was just the beginning. The court date was set for early March. I'd never been part of a civil suit before, and honestly, the whole process made my stomach twist. But I wasn't going to back down. I'd already spent too much of my life cleaning up Mark's messes. This time, I was going to shove the whole pile of trash right in front of a judge and let the truth do its work. The suit was filed for fraud, defamation, and emotional distress. Sierra and Candace filed their own claims, tied to mine. The lawyer called it a multi-party civil action. Sounded complicated. It was. But it was also airtight. We had receipts, text messages, bank statements, and sworn affidavits. Everything Mark had said and done was documented. The thing was, he didn't show up at the first hearing. His lawyer sent some excuse about Mark being under stress and needing more time to prepare. The judge gave him a short extension but made it clear, if he now showed again, there would be consequences. Fines. Possibly a warrant. The next week, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, "This is harassment." It was from Mark. He called me a liar, a spiteful old cow, and accused me of ruining his business reputation. He said he was going to sue me for defamation. The kicker? He attached a blurry photo of a new company he started, a dropshipping scheme selling cheap sunglasses from China with his name slapped on the website. He wrote, "I'm doing something with my life while you wallow in hate. You should be ashamed." I didn't even respond. I just forwarded it to my lawyer. Then something happened that made everything worse, for him. Candace had stayed quiet for a while after we filed the suit. She was angry, but she said she needed space to process. But she came back swinging when she found something in her inbox. It was a forwarded confirmation from her credit card company. A charge she didn't recognize, $212 for a romantic dinner package at a resort in Missouri. She hadn't been to Missouri. But guess who had? Mark. She called the resort and asked about the charge. They confirmed a reservation under his name. Same credit card number. He'd used her card to take another woman out. This guy wasn't even hiding anymore. He just kept doing it. Like it was a lifestyle. Candace filed a police report. That brought in a criminal element now. Theft. Identity fraud. Unauthorized use of a financial instrument. We were no longer dealing with just a civil case. This thing had legs. Then, 2 weeks before our next court hearing, Sierra called me. She was crying. She'd just lost her job. Apparently, Mark had found her workplace and sent an anonymous email claiming she was unstable and involved in a slander ring. He sent screenshots of his own fake documents, edited texts that made it look like Sierra was threatening him. Her HR manager called her in. They didn't believe the emails, but they said it was creating a workplace disruption. Sierra didn't argue. She quit before they could push her out. I was furious. So were the others. It was clear, Mark wasn't just lying. He was trying to destroy us. One by one. That's when I made a decision. We went public. We took everything, every screenshot, every piece of proof, every receipt, and shared it all on a public Facebook page. We named it The Real Mark Benson. We posted it anonymously. We didn't need to say much. The evidence spoke for itself. 5 women, same story. Same lies. Same man. It didn't take long for the page to blow up. Dozens of women commented, some asking if this was the same Mark they knew from back in college or from a work conference. One woman from Colorado said he applied to be her roommate, and when she asked for references, he ghosted. It spread faster than I expected. Someone shared it in a local Facebook group. Then it hit Twitter. Then Reddit. Then one of the women, Stephanie, his ex-fiancée, reached out and offered to speak to a local reporter. They were doing a piece on romance fraud and looking for real cases. 2 weeks later, the article ran. It was online and in print. The headline was blunt: man accused by multiple women of financial and romantic fraud, victims speak out. Mark's photo was right at the top. Not one he posed for, an old picture someone found from his insurance sales days, where he looked like the sleaze he really was. It hit him hard. The next day, he finally showed up to court. He walked into the courtroom like he owned the place. Pressed shirt, smug face, hair slicked back like he thought he was in some cheap legal drama. He wouldn't even look at me. Didn't look at Sierra. Didn't glance once in Candace's direction. He just nodded to his lawyer and sat down like this was some joke. Like the rest of us were just extras in the movie of his life. The judge didn't care about his theatrics. She was no nonsense. Late 50s, firm voice, sharp questions. The kind of judge who looked like she'd heard every excuse in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. His lawyer started off with the usual. Claimed this was a smear campaign, said the relationships were consensual and messy, but not criminal. He said Mark was the real victim of vengeful exes trying to destroy his future. The judge asked one question. Did your client use the plaintiff's inherited jewelry to finance a vacation for another woman? There was a long pause. Then the lawyer said, that cannot be proven without intent. That's when my lawyer stood up and handed over the documents. The pawn ticket signed by Mark, the copy of my grandmother's will, the screenshots of the cruise confirmation, the refund from the cruise line sent to me, and the bank statements showing the jewelry money hit his account days before the booking. It wasn't just proven. It was clear as glass. Then it was Sierra's turn. She testified. Calm, steady, factual. She told the judge how Mark manipulated her, asked her to help pay for a cruise he claimed was a healing trip, and even told her I was mentally unstable and abusive. She presented messages and voicemails. The judge looked through every page. Candace followed. She had the proof of the stolen credit card charge, the email trail, and copies of her police report. Her voice cracked at one point, but she held it together. She told the court how Mark built trust and used it to drain people. Financially and emotionally. When it was his turn to speak, Mark didn't even try to deny most of it. He just turned on the charm. He said he was struggling with mental health issues, blamed his unstable upbringing, and said we were all emotionally entangled with him in ways that clouded judgment. He claimed we misunderstood his intentions. I never wanted to hurt anyone, he said. Sometimes love gets messy. That's all this is. The judge didn't buy a word of it. Love doesn't involve fraud, she said flatly. And this isn't messy. It's deliberate. She ordered that the civil trial would proceed, set another hearing for damages and restitution, and said the criminal charges would be handled separately, but she wasn't done. She issued a temporary restraining order for all plaintiffs. Mark couldn't contact, harass, or speak to any of us again. If he did, he'd be in jail for contempt. He didn't smirk anymore after that. But that wasn't the end. Because right after the hearing, as we stepped outside the courtroom, Mark walked out the back entrance and got served. A plainclothes officer handed him an envelope. New charges: theft, identity fraud, and financial exploitation. The stolen jewelry. Candace's credit card. The forged emails to Sierra's job. The fake lease agreements he'd used in the past. Turns out, Stephanie, the ex-fiancée, had also filed a complaint. She'd stayed quiet through all of this. But the day the article ran, she went straight to the police with bank records, voice messages, and forged business documents. It was finally stacking up. I watched as Mark's eyes darted around the lobby, trying to figure out who was watching him. His hands trembled. The officer told him he had 10 days to turn himself in or a warrant would be issued. Mark didn't say a word. Just nodded and walked out. I should have felt relief. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I still hadn't gotten the only thing that really mattered to me. My grandmother's ring. The pawn shop said it was sold. But they kept records. With a little digging, and a few quiet favors from an old co-worker at the bank who used to do fraud investigation, I tracked down the buyer. They lived 2 towns over. A widow named Arlene, in her 70s. She bought the ring because it reminded her of her late husband's. I wrote her a letter. Not asking for anything. Just explaining the story. I attached a copy of my grandma's will and a photo of the ring on my grandmother's finger, taken at her 50th wedding anniversary. I told her the truth. And she called me 3 days later. I wore it once, she said, but it didn't feel like mine. It belongs to you. She mailed it back. I held that ring in my hand and cried for the first time since the day Mark called it his reward.